I was never really huge into the Resident Evil franchise before playing Village, to be honest. I didn't play RE7 before playing Village, but the game does give you a basic recap of the events in that game. The only other Resident Evil I've played besides Village was RE4, which I think is pretty good actually. Sure, there's some aspects that haven't aged very well, but it's still really fun, and overall it's just a really great game. I can see why some people view it as one of the best games ever made. Resident Evil 8, however, ditches the third-person action nature of 4 and goes for a more horror-y experience with the new first-person perspective and more of an emphasis on horror, just like 7 did, or so I'm told. So I was a bit skeptical going into this game. In fact, I originally didn't even plan on getting it, or at least so soon. That was until I decided to try out the gameplay demo and I said to myself, okay, this game is really cool, I want it. And you'll never guess what I did a few days later. I got it. Just a heads up before going into this review, this will be divided into 2 sections. The non-spoiler review, where I mostly talk about the gameplay whilst not discussing any of the spoilers like boss fights, and the spoiler review where I'll talk about what I think about the story itself as well as some of the boss fights. I'll leave timestamps to jump to them in the description as well as on screen right now. With all that out of the way, here's my review of Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village is a first-person survival horror action game. Now, when I say that, I really mean it's mostly an action survival game. There isn't actually that much horror, or not a lot of it. I've heard Resident Evil 7 had quite a lot of horror, so much that Capcom acknowledged in an interview it was too scary, so they cranked it down a notch, which I'm fine with. I'm not super into the horror genre and fiction myself. The game at least tries to be scary, especially in the house of Beneviento, which I talk about later, but most of the scary things in the game are just Ethan getting fucking tortured, especially his hands, since Capcom has a hand torture fetish for some unknown reason. Like seriously, right off the bat he loses 2 fingers, has his hands impaled and pretty much tortured by everyone, and this isn't really a spoiler since it barely affects the story, but at one point Ethan even gets his entire fucking hand chopped off, but like 2 minutes later he just super glues it back on and he's all fine. Oh, why don't we talk about Ethan Winters as a protagonist? I'll save the spoilers for the second part of this review, but get this. Leon in Resident Evil 4 is awesome. I love him. He roundhouse kicks people in the face, backflips out of windows, kicks doors open. Ethan Winters in Village is a dork. I hate him. He won't even show his face. I don't dislike him as much as some other people do. I thought he was alright, but it was kind of hard to truly connect with him. Sometimes he just feels kind of dense, you know? Like he isn't paying attention to his surroundings at all and he reacts like an hour late to everything. Don't get me wrong, it can be funny sometimes, like at this part.
Fuck you!
But sometimes he kind of just felt disconnected from the player. Like, look at this one part where Ethan is falling down what is a very, very large pit, presumably to his death, right? Listen to how calm his screaming sounds. How can someone possibly be screaming as calmly as that and not going like... The gameplay, in my opinion, is actually really fun. First of all, the controls are great. They're just as responsive as you want them to be and more, and you don't need to constantly switch to the inventory screen like in RE4. A minor issue I had with Resident Evil 4 is sometimes you have to pause and switch to the inventory screen to either change a different weapon or use any healing items. It sort of just broke the immersion and kind of damaged the pace of the game in my opinion. In Resident Evil 8, however, fortunately that issue was fixed. Since you can assign 4 different items in your hotbar, you can automatically equip with the D-pad, and using healing items has been assigned to R1. It may not seem like a lot, but coming from RE4, it felt really good to be able to swap weapons and heal so quickly, and that combined with the first-person perspective made this game feel really immersive in my opinion. In Village, you have quite a wide variety of guns to take down enemies, and all the guns feel different too. You have the standard handgun, a shotgun, a sniper rifle, a revolver you'll never get ammo for, and even a damn grenade launcher, which trust me, came in very useful during the final boss. And all of the different guns here just feel very fun to use. To me at least, it was very satisfying to take down so many monsters with all these weapons, although sometimes I feel like there's a little too much of it. Like there's this one area where you're underground fighting waves and waves of lichens for at least like 10 minutes, and it just felt like it dragged on twice as long as it needed to, especially since all the enemies are the basic ones that'll only approach and bite you. Well, they can dodge and flank you too, but still, most of the enemies in this area are like the exact same. Also, the enemy variety, in my opinion at least, didn't feel like much of a variety. There are these basic lichens with weapons, bigger lichens, these flying enemies, and finally the one with drills you can only kill by shooting the sensors on them. With how much combat is in the game, just fighting these same enemies over and over again got kind of repetitive, and I honestly wish there's more variety to cope with how much combat is in this game. You can also guard to reduce damage, which is a nice addition, but sometimes when you're out of healing items, you have no other option but to just block the attack, so it can feel kind of dumb having to just pray blocking won't entirely kill you. The grid-like inventory management returns from Resident Evil 4 into Village, and probably in every other RE game since I haven't played any of them. I like the grid-like format, but honestly here it seems kind of pointless because I never had a single moment in my playthrough where I needed to rearrange my inventory in a way to store more things. I played on standard difficulty, and the game never really made me feel like I was low on resources and I needed to be careful, since they just shower you with ammo and healing items. Meanwhile, in Resident Evil 4, I had tons of moments where my inventory was full of shit and I had to actually think of clever ways to fit more space. Also, you can buy more inventory space quite early into the game, which just made it feel even easier. Honestly, I think that they should have made the crafting materials actually take up space in the inventory like in RE4, but no, they're just stored somewhere else magically where you can't lose them or anything. To my knowledge, this is supposed to be a survival horror game, but in a survival horror game, you're supposed to have little supplies that actually make you think. In fact, I actually started playing Resident Evil 2 Remake after Village, which I'm loving so far, and in that game, on the standard difficulty at least, I actually had a lot of moments where I genuinely needed to conserve ammo, sometimes even just ran away either because I needed to conserve my bullets or I was out entirely. But in Village, the game gives you so many resources as well as different guns that it really didn't feel like a survival horror game. You can actually craft ammo for weapons, which I like and I think is better than just having enemies drop specific ammo upon killing them, but considering how the game showers you with resources that don't take up inventory space, it just made me feel even more overpowered. When you're not out shooting and stabbing various monsters, or getting stabbed yourself, you're exploring the different locations this game has to offer while dipping your feet in some puzzle solving. The reason I say dipping is because there aren't actually that many puzzles in the game. Most of it is just finding keys or other items to unlock an entrance to new rooms. Don't take it as I hate the exploration in this game because I actually quite enjoyed it, but I wish there were more genuine puzzles rather than most of it just being backtracking for the key to that one door you can't open that should lead you to the new area. I think that the game manages to strike a good balance between action and shooting monsters and the calm, relaxed exploring of this game's very nice locations, but there are some times where the game prioritizes exploration or prioritizes action. In several places, you can find the Duke's Emporium, which basically replaces the merchant from RE4, may he rest in peace. Although the Duke actually does mention his iconic phrase, "What are you buying?" Since they were old friends, so Capcom RE9 better be about the merchant and Duke's backstory, not stupid Ethan Winters, or else I'm gonna be very upset. All that aside, I actually do like the Duke as a merchant. Not only is he very useful, selling you things such as new weapons, ammo, finally, healing items, and recipes to craft other items, but he's kinda just a cool guy. Sure, he's morbidly, and I mean very morbidly obese, but he's pretty jolly. And who wouldn't like a guy who sells you funny shotguns to blow Lycan's heads off? And he also becomes kinda relevant to the plot, which I won't really talk about in this review, or at least during this section. You can also upgrade your current weapon's stats, such as their reload speed, overall power, or rate of fire, which can be quite useful. Just like before, you can also sell him all the things you come across on your journey, which you can use to buy even more funny shotguns. The reason it's called Resident Evil Village, or Village Resident Evil, since the logo is apparently so rebellious he doesn't want to follow the correct order of words, is because after defeating each of the 4 major villains, which are called the 4 houses, you're brought back to the village before going to the next one, since the village is what connects all the locations in the game together. I've heard some people say it was like an open world, which wasn't entirely true because there isn't a whole lot to do in the village, and you can't choose which villain to actually tackle next. I actually really like the village, both as a hub and a location. The muddy snow everywhere just makes the place such a joy to explore in my opinion, and despite being kinda gloomy, it feels alive at the same time, if that makes sense. Heck, the devs even consider the village to be a character itself, which like, what? Within the Duke's Emporium, there's a feature called the Duke's Kitchen, whereby gathering materials from hunting animals in the village, the Duke can cook you a nice meal that can permanently increase some of your stats, such as reduced damage while blocking and increased health, for example. It may sound kind of tedious to have to go out and find all these materials, but considering just how much of a joy the village itself is, I didn't mind it at all. I think this is a great addition to the gameplay, since it gives the player a good incentive to want to go out and explore the village for materials, and it also makes the village feel more like a real place since there are tons of animals and fish living in it. Something I was not expecting at all is just how much replayability this game has to offer. First of all, the game isn't super long. It only took me around 9 hours of my playthrough, where I didn't do a lot of side content, but I did go through pretty slowly. I've heard some people only getting 7 hours out of this game and some getting as much as 12. It's really about how you want to play. HowLongToBeat.com says it's about 9.5 hours, which I think is a good length. Upon beating the story for the first time, you unlock the actual hardest difficulty the game has to offer, Village of Shadows mode, as well as the extra content shop where you use the completion points you get from beating the game to buy new game modes, new guns to use in future playthroughs, infinite ammo for some of those guns, and even character models to view. When I say new game modes, I really only mean one, and that's Mercenaries mode. For anyone who's played Binding of Isaac Afterbirth, it's similar to Greed mode, but with a few extra tweaks. Basically, how Mercenaries works is that it still maintains the gameplay from the main game, but you're put in the village on a timer and have to kill the required amount of enemies for the goal to open up. Then you have to run to the goal before time runs out. You can also find these yellow orb thingies that can give you more time, and these blue ones will let you choose 1 to 3 permanent upgrades for your character. In between rounds, you can visit the Duke to get items that can help you, but your money is limited limited, so you need to spend them wisely. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting to have as much fun as I did playing Mercenaries mode. It's definitely a good game to play if you want more action in your Resident Evil game, although you still have to beat the main story to unlock it. But there is one minor criticism I have with it, and that's how short it is. It only lasts 3 rounds, with each round giving you 3 minutes to complete it, but if you're like me, you'll probably have 1 or 2 minutes left on the clock. I'm sure it was made short to give players a short but challenging experience that encourages more playthroughs to truly master it, but I wish they would have at least added in an endless mode for Mercenaries, because honestly, I felt like this gameplay was begging for one. And with that, we're ready to move on to the spoilery part of the video, where I discuss my opinions on the game's story. So unless you just really don't give a shit or want to experience the game for yourself first, I recommend you click off the video now. The story begins as Ethan's wife Mia is suddenly shot and killed, and their daughter Rose is kidnapped by Chris Redfield. After that tragic incident, Ethan wanders into a village and eventually finds a castle and goes in, with the idea that his kidnapped daughter was somewhere hidden in there. He soon finds out that she was indeed not in the castle, but manages to defeat the ruler of the castle, Lady Dimitrescu, and obtains a strange flask. He reports back to the Duke whom he met earlier before entering Castle Dimitrescu, and the Duke informs him that that very flask he has is one of the 4 he'll need to collect to save his daughter, each belonging to one of the 4 houses. There's Lady Dimitrescu, Donna Beneviento, Mora O, and Heisenberg. After learning this, it becomes Ethan's mission to obtain all 4 of the flasks so he can save his beloved daughter. I think the premise for this story is pretty good. If you like stories about loving fathers trying to save their daughter or son, then you'll probably like this one. The first area of the game, Castle Dimitrescu, is by far the best part of the game. It's rare for my favorite part of a game to be the introduction, but it does just about everything right. First of all, it's a castle. Castle settings are awesome, so they'll already score some bonus points. But I do still think it has the best design of a location in the entire game. What all of the other locations are missing is that in Dimitrescu Castle, there's an actual sense of progression. Basically, what your goal is to find 4 masks that you need to place on these angel statues near the main hall to escape the castle. So you can track how much progress you made in the castle by how many masks you have. On top of that, there are 3 kind of mini bosses throughout this section of the game, that being each of Dimitrescu's daughters, whose names are... Wait, they have names? I do like these fights against all the daughters, but I won't lie, I kinda wish I did more with them, and pretty much all the encounters function the exact same. Before the bosses, they may pop up for like a minute or 2 and chase you because funny survival horror game or something, and eventually you'll be in a room with them and there's some kind of opening to the outside world, making them vulnerable, so you just shoot the shit out of them until they die. Now, I actually do like the encounters with them, but not only do they all kinda just feel the same but in a different room, I just wish you did more with them because I thought they were pretty interesting. I also think this area has the best balance between backtracking for key items and actual puzzle solving, unlike the factory, which I'll get into later, that's almost entirely backtracking. But let's be real here, we all know why this is the best area of the game. Lady Dimitrescu, the 9'6" fake-ass vampire lady, is by far the highlight of the game. Apart from the fact that she is, hot, she's actually still a really good character in my opinion. I love how sophisticated she is with her daughters that are fucking brats, while at the same time being extremely psychotic, especially when you kill all of her daughters, talking about how much she is going to torture you, which, you know, I'm totally fine with, even transforming into whatever the hell this thing is. Also, I just really like her design. She definitely sticks out from the rest of the crowd, and I mean that in the best way possible. Something else I really love about this part of the game is how she's always in the castle, thus always being a threat. Like the big white Mr. X. It's not like she's always looking for you. Most of the time she'd just be wandering around, probably thinking about whose face to crush with her thighs next. But if you get near her, she'll get pissed off and try to fucking kill you, which, you know, I'm totally fine with. I genuinely think that some of my favorite parts of the game were just hiding from Dimitrescu in her castle because of how tense it is, and she's just a great fucking character and a genuine threat. My only real complaint with Dimitrescu part of the game is that it ends, which at that point it isn't even a criticism. Don't get me wrong, I do think the pacing is done well in her portion of the game, but because of how damn good she is, I just wish there was more. It's pretty obvious she's the poster child of this game since Capcom just loves putting her in all the trailers so damn much. And overall, I just think she's great and the game could have benefited from using her more. Also, the boss kinda just felt anticlimactic. Like, there's so much build up, she chases you through the castle, you kill all 3 of her daughters, and she transforms into this huge dragon thing, and then she just dies and that's it. Like, my playthrough was 9 hours long, and like 3 hours in I already killed her and the game just goes downhill in quality. And all you really do is just back up and shoot her a bunch until she goes down. I really would have liked to see something more complex with such a great build up. Next up, we have the House of Beneviento, otherwise known as the Dollhouse. This place is about Donna Beneviento, and okay, let me just drop the bomb now. This part of the game blows. It's by far the weakest part of the game in my opinion. First of all, the game steps 10 miles away from the concept of action because as soon as you step foot into this place to take away all your fucking guns and items, and for like 30 minutes, all you're doing is just walking around solving puzzles. I don't hate puzzle solving in video games, but the fact that this entire part is only puzzle solving was just boring for me. Yes, like all of the other areas in the game have puzzles, but those aren't back to back. In between that, you get to shoot monsters and stuff. And on top of that, the other locations are actually interesting. This is just a house. Fortunately, I had the people in my chat to help me solve all these stupid puzzles, so thanks for that, Blockity. It tries to focus on horror at this part, and the reason I put it in quotes is because honestly, I didn't think it was that scary. Like, there's this big fetus that chases you. Okay, just don't fucking look back. It really isn't that hard, guys. If you think fetuses are scary, how do you think your mom felt carrying one inside her for 9 months? Do you think she was like looking at the ultrasound? No, she wasn't. It's just a fucking baby.
Oh my god, it looks like me at 3 a.m. going to the fucking pantry to get some Cheez-Its.
So, why don't we talk about the boss fight? Wait, this is the boss fight? Okay, this is seriously not a boss at all. All you fucking do is find Donna 3 times and stab her. Which you don't even do yourself, you just click X to watch a cutscene of you stabbing her. If this is considered a boss fight, then Goomba and Mario is literally a Dark Souls boss. Also, dolls aren't scary, they're literally just dolls. Also, Donna Beneviento is just a shit character. I know she wasn't supposed to be as major of a character as Dame Tresque was, but all she is just a crazy doll, that's literally it. And the only time you even see her in what is specifically her part of the game is the hide and seek minigame, which isn't even hard because you can listen to what direction her voice is coming from. Oh, sorry, I mean boss fight. In conclusion, this area of the game is just shit in my opinion. It takes a step back from action for entirely puzzle solving and attempts to be scary with this fetus, and the main villain is very uninteresting in my opinion. Alright, on to the next one. The third villain in the game is Mora O, which I will say is way better than the stupid Beneviento house. First of all, Mora O is actually a pretty interesting character. He's this old, depressed guy who's really just a distraction from Mother Miranda rather than actually wanting to fucking murder him like Dame Tresque, which in my opinion is kinda cool. Also, his section of the game focuses mostly on the boss fight, which I thought was pretty unique. He turns into this big ass fish thing, and the boss fight has somewhat puzzle solving added into it too. Like, first you gotta drain the water by doing this funky thing with the lever, then you have to go through quite a lot of obstacles, including this one part where you have to push the buttons to activate platforms to get across quickly, which I actually really like. Then once you get to fight him, you have to lure him to these dynamite crates and blow them up. But eventually you'll run out of them, so you have to actually use explosives from your inventory to kill him. Honestly, I'm a big fan of boss fights in video games that have actual platforming or some other kind of obstacle to get across rather than just fighting the boss head on. Like the final boss of NSMB Wii, which is great in my opinion. So yeah, I think this portion of the game is decent. It has a cool boss and the villain's pretty interesting, but it is really short. I can definitely say it's better than that stupid doll bitch, but not including her ass, I'd say it's my least favorite. Last, we have Heisenberg's Factory. First of all, I just want to start by saying I think Heisenberg is a really cool character. He's not as good as Mommy Dame Tresque, but I really like him, although his voice actor is kind of shit. Like, it isn't bad, it just sounds like the voice for a different character is trying to do an impression of him, and in my opinion, it just sounds unnatural.
Do you have any idea how powerful that kid is? Even Miranda's scared of her. Last time, you freak! I swear to God!
What I like about Heisenberg is how all of the house leaders, including himself, are working under Mother Miranda. But he's the only one who's actually plotting to get his revenge on her and even tries to get you to join forces with him. But of course, Ethan declines since that would involve using his daughter as a weapon. Which also leads to this scene, which is like my favorite in the entire game because it's funny.
My daughter is not a weapon. Fuck you!
Also, his design is just awesome. Like, come on, if you look at this and you don't think it's cool as fuck, then you've got issues. Now, on to the actual design of the factory. It's alright. I'm not gonna say it's bad or anything, but the thing is, there's like no puzzle solving at all. It's all just exploring and backtracking for key items. Like in Dame Tresque's castle, you're working towards getting all 4 angel masks to open the door and get out. But in Heisenberg's factory, you're just trying to escape. You just walk around and shoot things and eventually get Heisenberg's key, which basically means that you win and get to get in mechs and shit and kick his ass. I actually do enjoy how the enemies here are different from the rest of the game. Most of them have these drills on their arms which prevents you from getting too close to them. And also the only way to deal damage to them is by shooting the orange sensor, which is usually on the front or back. There's also this mini boss with the propeller thing that chases you throughout the entire factory that I enjoyed. But after completing the factory, everything you know about the plot gets flipped on its head. Chris Redfield, the guy who killed your wife, isn't actually bad to those actually Mother Miranda impersonating Mia. Then we get in mechs and shoot the shit out of Heisenberg until he dies. Then Mother Miranda shows up and fucking kills Ethan, you know, the protagonist. Then we take control of Chris and his army with their assault rifles and helicopters and shit. Then he finds out Mia who's actually alive. Then we find out that Ethan has always he's been dead ever since 3 years ago in Resident Evil 7 and he's slowly molding away. Then we go and beat the shit out of Mother Miranda, and then Ethan dies, like, for real this time. Then we get a post-credit scene with his daughter Rose visiting his grave, hinting at a possible Ari now with her as a protagonist. Okay, have you got all that? Yeah, within the last hour or so, the story reveals a lot of shit. It basically flips everything you thought you knew about it before on its head, like an Ace Attorney case. I will admit, I really like discovering how everything linked back to Mother Miranda, and it gave me a good motive to take her down. But there are some issues I have with this part. It kinda just feels like it all came out of nowhere, to be honest. Like, throughout the entire game, you're in castles and industrial factories with pistols and knives. Then all of a sudden, you have these Transformer mechs with all these helicopters and military assault rifles and shit. It kind of just felt like it all came out of nowhere and somewhat disconnected from the rest of the story. Now, I'm gonna be honest, those last missions were a lot of fun, but I still think it felt out of place, to be honest. Like, the game literally just turned to do a Call of Duty mission after Ethan dies, or kinda dies. I know in games like Resident Evil 4 there's a lot of action, but that game really doesn't take itself seriously. You play as a trained private government agent who kicks down doors, roundhouse kicks enemies when they are vulnerable, and makes cheesy one-liners after surviving near-death encounters.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
In Village, you play as this normal guy searching for his daughter. So in RE4, you'd expect over-the-top action set pieces, where in Village it just feels out of place. In Village does still take itself seriously when it pulls all this Call of Duty mission bullshit, but in Resident Evil 4, they're self-aware about it, which allows them to go further with it. But you can't expect me to think they're gonna go from exploring castles full of vampires and wolf zombie things to helicopters and mechs and assault rifles with all of this fucking ammo to make sense. And to be honest, I didn't feel that emotional when Ethan sacrificed himself, mostly because he kind of just felt disconnected from the player, for me at least. Like I mentioned earlier, he just reacts so late to a lot of things and is pretty dense. And during moments where you think he'd be screaming his ass off, he's just silent, barely screaming at most, like a fucking puppet. So overall, I think the story in this game is good. There are some characters I like, characters I dislike, and characters I really like. Ethan is an alright protagonist in my opinion. I'm not gonna say he's bad, but he really isn't amazing either. So yeah, I enjoy my time with the story. Obviously, I have a few issues with it, some minor and some major ones, like the direction the last hour of the game takes, but I still think it's pretty good. In conclusion, I think Resident Evil Village is great. I know some diehard Resident Evil fans don't like the new direction with the first-person perspective and emphasis on horror, but I like it. The locations are fun to explore, and all the guns are also really fun to use. Some of the villains I liked, although some I didn't like very much. And this game isn't incredibly long, so you may be able to fit multiple playthroughs with this game's many difficulties, and new items for subsequent playthroughs. But like I went into detail earlier in the video, I do have a number of issues with the game. You see, the way I overall feel about Village is kinda weird. Did I enjoy my time with the game? Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Can I recommend this game? Yes, I can. Whether you're a longtime fan or a newbie like I sort of was, I think a lot of people will enjoy this game. Now, do I think it's an amazing game? Not really, to be honest, with the ending taking a different turn from the rest of the story. Some one-note villains, and a protagonist is supposed to be a somewhat self-insert for the player, just being alright. I don't think Resident Evil Village is an amazing game. I just say it's pretty good. So I'll give it an 8 out of 10. It isn't a perfect game, but I really enjoy my time with it. I'm still not sure if this will be my game of the year, though. Sure, it's a pretty good game, but I still think I like Returnal more. Heck, even Persona 5 Strikers, because, you know, I'm a biased Persona fan. Anyways, that's it for this review. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time.